Welcome to the AT Parenting Survival Podcast, where you get help and guidance through the chaos of parenting a child with anxiety or OCD. This show is for educational purposes and is not intended to replace the guidance of a qualified professional. Here's your host, child therapist, Natasha Daniels.
Welcome to another episode of the AT Parenting Survival Podcast. Today we're going to be talking about how to help our kids boost their self-confidence. A lot of our kids, and a lot of us as adults, really lack self-confidence. And when you add anxiety and OCD to the mix, self-confidence takes a big hit. And so it can impact our self-confidence. And also a lot of the struggles are exacerbated by a lack of self-confidence. So when you don't believe in yourself, it's even harder to tap into those skills because you already have this mindset that it's not going to work, or that nothing you do is right, or that you're not capable. And so building self-confidence for all kids and teens and adults is important. It's something that we can all work on. We can work on it as parents, and we can certainly help foster that confidence in our kids, teens, and young adults. But how do we do that? That is why I invited Sharon West to the show. Sharon is actually one of my favorite people in the world, to be honest. I love her. I actually met Sharon through a mutual friend who's also phenomenal. And she was a teen confidence mentor, which I had never heard of that term. And I wanted to know more about her and her work. And so we actually started to connect, and she was looking for a mentor, someone to help her with online stuff. And we have been connected ever since. And I was so impressed with her skills and her programs that I quickly signed my son up for her stuff. And so I was like, not only do I want to help you expand and reach, hopefully eventually a global scale, but I want my child to just soak you up and learn from you. And he has done phenomenal in her programs. She just has this innate talent to connect with teens on a level I have never seen before, and to really boost their self-confidence and to create an environment that fosters this acceptance, that it's something that we can't do for our kids, because in the episode, we'll talk about the things that we can do as parents, but there is that component that we will never be able to do because they can only get it from their peers, but in an organized, structured way. And that is kind of what she does. So let me tell you a little bit about Sharon. Sharon, for the last 15 plus years, has worked with teens in a variety of roles. She is a life coach, so she does one-on-one, and she does her teen groups. She's been a foster mom. She is a foster mom currently. She's a youth leader, and most importantly, and I always think this is the most important thing, she's a mom of 3 as well. And so she knows firsthand the challenges teens face as they try to figure out who they are, where they belong, and how to believe in themselves in a world that often tells them they're not enough. She started noticing confidence trends with teens, and she noted what qualities existed in teens who had the confidence and the areas of growth with teens who lack confidence. She is just really a savant in this area, where she can just spot that in a way that I think is really incredible. She took all that knowledge, experience, and passion, and she created a program called Connected and Skilled. It is an in-person program. She has a couple of different programs. We're in Arizona, so if you're in Arizona, check out her in-person programs. They are fantastic. But I have been working with her, and she is now offering a virtual Connected and Skilled, which a lot of you have been asking me about. Where does my son go? How does he get? Where did I find a teen confidence coach and a teen confidence program? And so I have been talking to her about, this needs to go virtual. There are so many people who don't have access to care or to these groups or to teen coaches that specialize in self-confidence, that there are people that could benefit from this virtually. And so her first virtual program is going to start in August of this year, 2025. And I am excited for you to meet Sharon and soak up her wisdom and hear her perspective, and then she will talk about that program as well. If you want to check it out, you can go to natashadaniels.com/teen, and we'll forward you over to her stuff. I also want to let you know that this podcast episode is sponsored by OCD, and OCD offers affordable, effective, convenient therapy, and they're available in the US and outside the US. You can schedule your free 15-minute consultation to see if an OCD is the right fit for you and your child, just go to treatmyocd.com. That is treatmyocd.com. I will leave a link in the show notes. So without further ado, here is my interview with Sharon. Well, I want to welcome to my show, Sharon West. Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
I'm so excited to be here. Thanks, Natasha.
Yeah, you have so much wisdom to share about. I've learned so much from you on how to tap into our teens' confidence. And I think this is a topic that a lot of us raising kids with anxiety and OCD, we're so focused on anxiety and OCD that we forget the bigger picture of that low self-esteem, that lack of self-confidence that happens with a lot of kids, but in particular, our kids as well. And so I invited you on because I thought it would be just a great thing for parents to hear. What are some of the signs of low self-confidence? Like, how do we even know that our kids are struggling with a self-confidence issue?
Yeah, so oftentimes signs that I see fairly blaring are negative self-talk, reluctancy to make decisions. So they're in the moment and maybe they'll make a decision, but they'll start to second guess it and they won't make a decision to move forward. One other thing I see quite often is excessive need for validation. So kind of like going back to what I just said is they may make a decision, but they'll be like, is that the right thing? Did I do the wrong thing? What will my friends think? What do you think? Instead of just being confident that they made a decision and let's see where this decision takes us and let's have some growth here.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know sometimes kids can appear self-confident. It's interesting because I feel like some kids really show you their lack of self-confidence. Like they are so self-conscious and they doubt all their decisions, like you said. Sometimes that could be a clinical issue. Like with moral OCD, some of our kids can have intrusive thoughts that they are lying. So it can come off as they're not making the right decision, but it's actually clinical. But separate from the clinical aspect, just the doubting of themselves, like not believing in themselves. I see that as well. But some kids seem on the surface really self-confident, like they almost seem cocky.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, because I see that both with my son, I see like sometimes overinflated self-confidence, which is super annoying. But
yeah, totally.
It is an insecurity of I have to be the best at this, or I have to say like I know everything. And that also is sometimes a lack of self-confidence. You see that?
Yes, definitely. I see that. And kind of to tag on that, when we see some jealousy or comparison, where, kind of tapping on that overinflated ego, they're not as good as this at this as I am, or, it breeds more frustration or anger or more negative emotions rather than a celebration of somebody in their circle doing something great and special, even if it is better than they can do it.
Yeah, that is a good point. It's funny because sometimes I'll notice with my kids, like it's not happening as much anymore, but my 13-year-old would do this a lot. Like I would praise another kid in the house, there's three of them, and I would say, oh, you're doing such a phenomenal job at da-da-da. And then in the corner, the little one would be like, what am I, chopped liver? Like, well, I do that too. Like, I wasn't even talking to you. This isn't even about you. But like me complimenting one child was like negating it for the other child, like.
It's like a domino. Yeah. And one other thing, Natasha, that I see, and it took me several years of experience to pick up on this, but I love to share this one with parents, is one other sign that I feel like is sometimes missed is teens' unwillingness or inability to communicate opinions about something. I remember one time I took a group of teens to an ice cream shop. It was like a thrifty at 31 flavors where they just had a lot of flavors. And several of the kids just ordered it, wasn't a big deal. And then it came to the kid last in line. And I could sense that this was an uncomfortable situation for them. So, I was connecting, trying to, make sure, see if there was things I could do to step in to help. And the teen looked at me and he said, I've never been able to pick out my own flavor of ice cream before. My mom just always brings it home and that's what we eat. I thought about that for a minute, and that has really driven my passion in believing that the more opportunities teens have to formulate opinions, even if it's just something so small as, oh, what kind of ice cream are you going to pick out? What's your favorite flavor? Oh, if that's not available, what's your second flavor? Like, those opinions are so important to having a teen really, grow their self-identity and therefore confidence.
Yeah, which kind of leads me to talk about, and we can just jump in here because it's a good thing to dive into, is the things that we can do inadvertently to shut down confidence. I mean, I feel like, and I say this like ad nauseum, so anyone who's listened to me has heard me say this a million times, like we're only one piece of the puzzle. Because I think as parents, we're very quick to be like, get out the whip and like self-hate, and I've done this wrong, or I've created this lack of self-confidence. And I do feel like there's like a genetic component to confidence. I just see that in my kids, like a wiring thing where they're getting the exact same parenting, but I have one child who's like super confident and another child who's two kids maybe who are not confident. And you're just like, it's the same parenting.
Yeah.
Well, the oldest one had a bit different parenting situation, but you're like genetically, I feel like there's a bit of a predisposition to maybe lack self-confidence. But then we have the environment, it's like you've got nature and nurture. And I feel like we can sometimes inadvertently overcompensate or not give our kids, like you were just talking about, opportunities to make their own decisions, to fail and not to rescue them, to like believe that they can handle it. And even when it comes to anxiety and OCD, that ability to say, you don't need to be codependent on me, like you can handle it, you can use your skills independently, is boosting self-confidence.
Yeah, I agree totally with everything you said. And I'm also going to add on to that that's really hard for a parent to do. So, I mean, it is extremely hard to let your teen struggle. And those moments, I think as parents, we have to really tap into our intuition to know, okay, is this one of those moments we step in, or is this one of those moments we kind of just sit down and stay quiet? And how long do I stay quiet for? So I'm going to share an experience about my son, because as you mentioned that, they're remaining quiet and letting them struggle. In the area where I live, sports are really competitive in high school. And most kids who make the competitive sports teams, like a lot of them have been on club sports where they have year-round training and stuff like that. Well, freshman year comes along and my son wanted to try out for the soccer team. And I mean, it is my first kid going into high school. I really didn't know much about it, except for he's like, I want to try out for the soccer team. Then he tells me that there's cuts, and I'm like, okay, I'm learning as I go. So he had been on club soccer, and I thought, oh, well, I'm a mom. I'm like, he's so great at soccer. Of course he's going to make the team. This is going to be so fun. I'm going to be a soccer mom. Like, I love that. Dirty clothes and on the run. I like that. So he makes first cuts, second cuts. And then, one day after cuts, he gets in the van and he says, I could tell by the way he was walking out from tryouts, I could read his body language. Okay, it looks different today. And he gets in the van and he looks at me and he's like, Mom, I didn't make the cut today. And I always have something to say, but my intuition as a mom told me, don't say anything. Just be quiet. And I honored that. And I looked at him and that's what I did. I just looked at him and I was quiet. And and maybe it was awkward, but I was intentionally quiet. So I just gave him space to think through this. And he took a moment and he looked at me and he goes, I'm going to try out for the wrestling team. He's like, that's a no-cut sport at my school. And I was like, oh, okay, great. And in that moment, I was so grateful. Like, I didn't jump in. I wasn't like, oh, that stupid coach, he didn't see how great you were, or that's okay, son. I know you're great at soccer. I just resisted that urge to try and like make my son feel better, because those words isn't what he needed. He problem solved himself. And not that the end of the story matters, but I am going to share that, his freshman year, never having played on like a wrestling team, he made state champ that year as a freshman. And I share that story because, sometimes we don't know what those failures can bring. And more importantly to me, I feel like teens are so smart and they're really intuitive to themselves, that my son was like, oh, okay, well, maybe wrestling's my sport. And those are things we can't even come up with. Like, we don't know their thoughts. We're not with them on the day to day. But if we allow them space to kind of trust themselves, then, it's so exciting to see what they come up with. It's awesome.
Just the awareness that he was like, he got into the car and he was problem solving. You gave him space. So you didn't kind of like pollute his like train of thought. You gave him that space, and then he problem solved a sport that is a no-cutting sport. Where can I succeed where they can't reject me? And then he actually succeeded, which isn't, like you said, really the goal of the story. That's a nice little silver lining.
Yeah.
The fact that he was able to say, this doesn't feel great, and now what? Let me think of sports that they don't cut people out. And you didn't have to do that for him. You gave him that space. That is hard to do, I think, as a parent, but so important. I think it's like a counterintuitive approach where we want to swoop in and we want to be like, you're the best, and it's their loss, and
blame it, be stirring that anger and blame. Yeah.
And it's not necessarily that we don't do those things, especially for some kids who won't ever jump to the conclusion. Your son obviously had a lot of resiliency built in for him to go there. Like, he had the skills already for him to connect. And so we might eventually do have to swoop in and say things like, actually, I was just deep diving on hopelessness, learn hopelessness today, because a member of the AT parenting community she's just always high level. She's like in her doctorate program. So she was asking me about learned hopelessness. And I'm actually doing a class on mindset shifts on Friday. So it kind of,
love that.
I was already kind of in the weeds with hopelessness and how do we help our kids not feel hopeless. But it was a great refresher today. And it reminds me, like, some kids don't have the mindset where they're like, this isn't about me. They personalize it. We're talking about the 3 P's of hopelessness, like, and personalization is one of them, where like, and then globalization, like, I'm going to like, it's pervasive. Like, so I'm horrible at soccer. It's my fault. They didn't like me. And now I'm not good at any sports, like that, those levels of pervasiveness. He didn't obviously have that, because he was able to jump in and be like, all right, on to the next thing, which says something great about his DNA and his parenting, that he was resilient already at that point. But we won't know where our kids are going to go with that if we don't give them space. We won't know where they're going. We can go there and jump in and spoon feed them the not personalizing it, the not making it pervasive. We can spoon feed that before they even need that.
Totally. I love that, Natasha. And also, I think just us as parents trying to be aware of where they're at, so that, we don't try and jump them from A to Z in one thing. It's like, okay, a baby step. So, maybe we have a teen who is scared to even try out for that sport. So, okay, in what ways can we offer support with where they're at, without comparing them to kind of like you brought up with your kids, without comparing them to their siblings, because that's that's just not effective.
Yeah.
Well, your sibling or the neighbor, so and so, they tried out for the sport. You can do it too. Okay, that might not be helpful. So I think one thing that I really love that has been effective in that way is asking questions.
Yeah.
And I know, like I say that, like we as parents, we can all roll our eyes at the idea of asking our teens questions because sometimes, I mean, sometimes that goes somewhere and sometimes it doesn't. So read the room on this one, but you know, what, where can we give our teens space to give insights to where they're at and have their feelings be totally valid. And if we can start to just get there with our teen, I mean, that's giving you the lottery tickets. So how can we be good at asking questions? And maybe the question is something really, really simple and small, like meet them where they're at. And then when we get the gift of a response, I do like to call it a gift because if our teen is willing to respond and communicate, it's a gift. It's a gift.
Yeah.
So how can we celebrate that gift? And I like to use the word validation a lot. Like, how can we validate where they're at, even if we don't agree and we definitely don't understand? And one concept about validation that I love to share with parents is when we validate our teens, it doesn't mean we agree with them.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean we align. And we don't have to agree, understand, or align to validate them. Validation is a gift that we give back of love, of effort to trying to connect with them, of gratitude that they're willing to share. And on top of that, a celebration that they have something to share, kind of going back to that, we want them to form opinions. So if our teen is sharing opinions, that's a way like we can celebrate because they have an opinion. That's awesome. That's a step to growing confidence. So I love that.
Funny. This is reminding me of something that happened yesterday. And I want to go back to the asking questions because I think that is so, so important. It's such a great tip.
Yeah.
I'm laughing because I was driving with my 13-year-old yesterday. We're like running an errand, and she's in that stage at 13 of like everything is black and white. And she has like, I think it's like from 13 to like mid 20s. It's like
Yeah, it happens.
black and white. Like, I'm right, you're wrong. This is right, this is wrong. Like, and they start to develop their ideology and it's like really strong. And she is just on this anti AI kick, which I think
Yes, oh, how fun.
I actually think her older sister, who's an artist and is, in college for art, is the one that really, she would say this isn't true, but I think that that's what planted the seed because she is very like, it's taking artist jobs. But anyway, I was saying to her, you can have this opinion. I was doing the opposite of what you were actually saying. I was like really reassuring her, validating her opinion. I was just saying like, oh, you're between 13 and mid 20s, you're going to have these like, because I was saying AI is not all bad. I love AI. I like, which obviously may be controversial because she's like, Mom, you're going to get canceled. And you shouldn't have posted. I posted some thing on Instagram that was like ChatGPT, like it was a trend. And she goes, that was not a trend for you to jump on. She had very strong opinions about it. She's like, I can't believe you didn't get like hate comments. You should take that down. And I'm like, I'm not really thinking about it. That was like 2 weeks ago. But what was cute is she was just like, my opinions will always be my opinions and I will always have them. And
Ooh,
she was just
love it.
so confident to the point where eventually she taught me where I was like, you're allowed to have your opinions and your opinions can be this strong. Your opinion that you're right and everybody else is wrong, or that you can't see AI in like the nuanced gray that I was trying to talk to her about the Industrial Revolution. It's like, I'm like,
How'd that go?
it didn't, I was like, the farmers were really upset during the Industrial Revolution. And, she's like, well, I would be part of the resistance. I'm like, all right. But that's, she's just wired to have these opinions. But I love actually what you're saying. I should have probably just been like, I love that you're so confident in your opinion, even though I disagreed with it. And I think that a lot of what you teach and what I love about you is like, these are things that are a bit counterintuitive sometimes. They're like
Mhm.
they can seem simplistic, but when you're in the moment, they're kind of hard. It's like it's hard to have, and that's just an example. Obviously, AI is just
Yeah,
a minor example, but
yeah,
having maybe a really strong, different opinion than you, and us putting meaning to it. Like, what does this mean for my child, regardless of what it is? And I don't
yeah.
want them to have this opinion, even though they're their own unique self and they're allowed to have their opinions.
Mhm.
And how do we sit and honor that to
Yeah,
boost their self-confidence?
totally. And what one thing to add on to that, how do we leave that fear aside that our children are going to have different value systems and belief systems than us?
Yeah.
And I mean, that's hard. I mean, that's so hard to at one time, at one in one moment celebrate, oh, I'm so happy they're sharing opinions, and really like taming down that fear of also what that means that we're going to believe differently, they may choose things differently, they see things differently, their future may not be what I always thought it was going to be for them because they believe, some of their core beliefs and values are starting to form different than mine. And just kind of having that ability to love and honor them instead of being scared and feel like anger towards them, or even sometimes, I mean, I've had to work through this, like a little bit what you went through yesterday with your daughter, where it's like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about, like maybe a form of disrespect for them
Mm.
in our words or tone or follow up or something like that, because they can feel that when it comes through. So all that work we just did to listen to them, and we lash out, a snarky comment or something insinuating that they don't know what they're talking about, or they'll learn it the hard way.
Mhm.
That impulse control of, some things we're just not going to say, and it's not helpful to them.
Yeah. And
It's
it's
hard.
a muscle. Like I talk about anxiety and OCD and parenting, that it's a muscle. It's a muscle that we have to practice and build. But I want to swoop back to your thing about asking questions because I like that too. I feel like it's very easy. I can give another example of when I did not do this and I should have, because I always like to just throw myself under the bus when we're talking about these things. But asking our kids questions, not why are you doing that or what are you going to do about that in a accusatory sort of way, but giving them the respect of what's your next step. Or I've talked about this, I think, before on the podcast, like with my 15-year-old who's doing online schooling. When we first started, I would jump in and just be like, okay, this is what I was over controlling. I was like, this is what your day looks like. And I would write it on the whiteboard. I'd be like, you take a break at
Mhm.
like 10 to 10:15 and then 11 to, I was like micromanaging everything. It wasn't going well because
Yeah.
he wasn't really, with his ADHD, he wasn't meeting my rigidity in the way that I
Yeah.
wanted him to. And
Mm.
then what I noticed is that it's much better when I say to him, so tell me about your day. What does your day look like? And just
Mm.
that simple question kind of gave him that ownership of like, this is my day and I
Oh,
get to
yeah.
decide. And so now I notice it's a habit. And I think it's actually kind of an executive functioning habit that he will say to me, like probably when I'm done recording this, I'll come out and I'll say, so what are you going to do today? And sometimes he does this without me prompting now. He will outline his day, like in minute detail. He'll be like, okay, so I'm going to go eat breakfast and then I'm going to go work on biology and then I'm going to take a little break. And he will, but what I notice is that when he is coming up with his own game plan, and could be for anything, if your child's having a struggle with a peer and you're like, so what's your plan? What's your next step? Like sometimes we don't give them that opportunity. Like we swoop in and we say, and I'll tell you an example of when I did do that. That was not good. But I do feel like with my son, he is much more likely to follow through when he outlines his day. And then
Oh.
when he's off track and I say, what are you doing now? Are you doing the thing that you said? Are you doing biology now? He's more likely to go back on track because it's not about me, it's about him, which is really
Mhm.
helpful. With my oldest daughter, the other day, she was like freaking out because she didn't have her prescription was really low. And I was like, how could you not notice that you have three more pills, for anxiety medication? I was like, I mean, like, I would see 20 and I'd be like, oh, I need to get a new prescription, or like, have I gotten my next bottle yet? But that's me. She's not me. Um, And she was just paralyzed with like, what do I do? And instead of doing what you said, because it's not intuitive, like I should have paused and I should have been like, what do you think your next step is? Even though
Mhm.
I clearly know her next steps, instead I spoon fed it to her, and it's just an opportunity. And I think it's an example of it's not intuitive. And a lot of times we have to pause and it's
Yeah.
artificial because I
Mhm.
said to her, well, okay, the first step is you call the psychiatric nurse. And I was like, do you know when your next appointment is? No. And then I looked on my calendar and I was like, it's June, blah, 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 spoon feeding it. And then I was
Mhm.
like, message her. And then she screenshots the message and she goes, what do I do now? And instead of giving her an opportunity and be like, what do you think your next step is? Which can feel artificial. Um,
Mhm.
I was like, screenshotted the CVS and told her like, you need to call this number and transfer it
Mhm.
over to California. That, that inadvertently fosters that lack of self-confidence of next time I have a struggle, I'm just going to have to go back to my mom again.
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
use that as an example because I think sometimes even with this intention of knowing what to do, it's a daily practice.
It's time we put help directly in our kids' hands. Introducing Crushing OCD course for kids and teens.
It was way more helpful than all the other therapy we've ever done because we didn't really know what to do. So we weren't really doing it before. So the course helped to figure out what the exposures are and how to do them.
We're not in therapy and find it really hard to find an ERP trained therapist here. So we're currently with like the public health service, but again, they don't seem to be trained in ERP. It's filled that gap that we don't have that was desperately needed.
This was really well timed for us to use between therapists and to help us get off to a good start with this new practice.
It was easy to use. I was able to do it from my phone or also on the computer.
There's different ages, so there were younger kids, there were teenagers, and so that was really nice too, to have a variety of ages where it wasn't just geared towards younger kids or older kids. It was a nice variety.
It's helpful for our kids to hear it from this third party as opposed to just us saying it.
I really like the offense and defense method. I love working on poking at OCD while it's sleeping. It makes it a little bit easier to do, and it's kind of fun. I'm planning on using it to work on my fear of holding or touching batteries and stuff like that.
So it was really helpful, and I think a lot of other kids would like it. I thought that I was the only one who had worrying about the weather and stuff. And then there was somebody else on there who worried about the same thing, which was really helpful.
Seems less scary to work on stuff now that I've watched this class, and I'm more interested to work on it.
I like trying to do more exposures still, and before I wasn't, I just didn't want to do them.
I've worked on some of my bigger compulsions and been successful.
I realized that it was helpful to do the exposures. Before it was really, really hard. It's still hard, but it's helpful to know that I need to do them.
Before there would be a lot of battles about it. So it is definitely less loggerheads.
Really, really good course and super helpful.
Definitely would recommend this. It's really easy to follow. It's nice bite-sized videos. I really like the worksheets that go along with it, and I think it's really helpful.
To learn more about this course and register your child or teen, go to atparentingsurvivalschool.com.
It is a daily practice, and like you said, it's a skill that they can develop. And even if they can just get from step 1 to step 1.2,
Yes.
we're still moving,
Yeah.
and we're still moving in a direction. And that movement, even if it's really slow and possibly a little painful for us, it's still movement.
Yeah. And it's an opportunity. I mean, I could have said, what do you think you need to do first? And if she was in paralysis and was I don't know what, at least I gave her the opportunity to think about that.
Totally.
She would say, oh, I don't know her number. You're right. Just 1.5, just a little bit towards the goal. I think a lot of us, myself obviously included, don't think about giving those opportunities because maybe our kids have a history of melting down or they have a history of going into full-blown panic. And so we proactively prevent those situations because
it's easier.
Yeah, and it's scarier.
Yeah.
We don't want the fallout. And so we rob them of the opportunity of a little wiggle room figure it out themselves. That doesn't mean abandon them. It might be being right next to them and supporting them, but giving them the wiggle room to figure it out themselves is a gift.
Yeah, I love it. And also, I think just you posing that question of what's next, like, you know, teens remember phrases like they're like sponges now. So just you asking that question to your daughter, okay, what's your next step? Then she can remember that phrase and then repeat it to herself next time. And I think also to tag on to that, having you as her mother, someone she loves, ask that question helps her believe, oh, mom believes that I am capable of thinking of the next step. Maybe my skills aren't there yet. Maybe I'm going to need a little help, but my mom believes that I can learn, or I know that there is a next step, and I'll get there. I'll figure that out. I might need a little more help now, but that's the plan.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a good point. And when you're talking about that, it kind of brought up something for me where I was like, how many of us are responding to our kids in a rescue mentality because of our own childhood? Because I thought about my own mom, and my mom would do nothing. So like pure abandonment, like I would have to figure it out myself. Like I filled out my own PLUS loans, which is it's a parent loan for college. I filled out the application and I just handed it to her for her to sign because she would do nothing to help me like move forward in my life. And I guess sometimes, and you can think about those of us that are listening, you can think about your own childhood and like the overcompensation of, I felt like I had no support or no help. And so I think some of us swing to the opposite end of the pendulum and overcompensate. Like, I don't want my child to feel like they're abandoned or they don't have help. And so we can over micromanage or over support to the point where we're robbing them of the opportunity. And it is different. Like if she was just, given the question of what do you do next versus my mom being like, I don't care, or like, why are you telling me? That's very different. It's not abandoning our kids, it's giving them that space. But I think some of us have that childhood wound that we're like, I don't want my child to feel like I'm not there. And so we wind up in more of a rescue mentality.
Yeah. I mean, that happens a lot, I think, with all of us and I think we as parents, we can give ourselves some space to know that, maybe I stepped in too quickly this time, or next time I'm just gonna take a pause, because just like our kids, they learn from not nailing it every time, and so do we. And as we give ourselves that grace to, oh man, I stepped in a little too early, or kind of like you said, oh, I said the wrong thing. Like, it's just got to be okay. We are building our resilience of being imperfect, just like we want our kids to do that. And so as we model that with ourselves, and how we talk to ourselves when we're imperfect, the hope is that also comes through to our kids, that they're not mom's not perfect, I'm not perfect either, and this is, it's probably a bigger word for some kids, that sometimes that, this is what building resilience looks like, that I didn't do it so good this time. I'm aware this is what I want to do better next time, and I'm going to do better next time. I heard a quote the other day that I love it, and I love to walk. You know that about me. I'm an Arizona girl, and it's just always beautiful outside. Just the thought that the quote was something like, all things can be resolved through walking. And the reason why I love that is because when we're out walking, it's like time to reflect. And it kind of helps us get into the mindset of intentional parenting, where we give ourselves time and space and grace to acknowledge, one, we're not perfect, and that's totally okay. We're not going to screw up our kids. but two, like reflecting so that we show up intentionally, like, you know, maybe driving in the car with your daughter, you didn't like the response about the AI and you're like, maybe I shouldn't have said that. But those moments where we give ourselves space and grace to reflect, we're like, okay, next time I have the gift of a conversation with my child. I think, you know, every conversation is a gift, be it good or hard or frustrating, like, this is how I want to show up.
Yeah.
And then we can grow our skills too as parents, which in turn will, you know, help us and model to our kids. When we work at things, we can get better, which is also the growth mindset you were talking about earlier. Like, if we work at things, we, through our work and our effort, we can and we will improve.
Yeah, and I love that. Well, one, I do think walking is really therapeutic because it's almost, to me, it's like a pause button. It's like a pause button on your day, and like you, like it's like jumping out of the river for a minute to just like look at the water flowing and being like, okay, what is happening and what is going on? We often don't give ourselves space to pause.
Yeah.
And I think walking, I know when my husband died, like I walked like a zombie, like 5 a.m. every single day.
Yeah.
Like I just couldn't
Yeah.
walk enough. And I wasn't a walker at all. It was just my body was just dragging me to like the desert path to walk because my
Yeah.
brain needed a process.
Yeah.
But I like what you're saying too. I feel like we want our kids to be self-confident, and but we often don't model it for ourselves. So many parents beat themselves up. They hear episodes like this, and they all they hear are the things they're not doing well. And that's why I purposely share all the things I often don't do well.
Yeah.
Because every time, and I probably say this annoyingly too much in my house, but every time something gets messed up or my kids mess up, I will say, what's the lesson in this? I go, there's life lessons. What's the lesson in this? What did we learn from this?
Totally.
I mean, you can get this language down that you always do that. I mean, they hear it all the time. It'll become an internal dialogue. That's the hope. But then if I don't do that myself and I don't live that way, then I'm not modeling that. And so when I think about the AI conversation yesterday,
I love it.
or when I think about, you know, the medication conversation a few days before that with the other daughter, I don't go to self-beating. I don't go to like, oh gosh, this is so embarrassing. I'm going to tell Sharon just all the ways I'm doing the opposite of what she's saying. I look at it and I'd be like, that's so interesting, you know, that my muscle just wasn't developed in that moment. And I feel like, okay, next time I'm going to really work on that. Not in a way of like, next time I need to do better, but it's like, that's something I want to pay attention to next time.
Yeah.
It's like, we are learning and evolving until we die. And I actually love that about life. I feel like the fact that we get to grow and grow. And when I'm 80, hopefully I'll be 80, I get to grow and grow, and like, it never stops. And if we can have enthusiasm about that, and our kids can observe that, and we share that, and we model that, and we believe in it, then it can impact them just as much as it impacts our life.
Totally. That reminds me, this is a little embarrassing, but since we're open to vulnerability on this, one time, and I'm embarrassed to admit that I did it, but my daughter was having crying, reading a text. It was more than crying. It was a difficult phase. And I asked her, what's going on in your text? Like, I wanted her to share with me, and she wasn't ready to give me that gift. She wasn't ready to share. I literally leaned over the table and I snatched her phone from her to read what was going on because she was crying. I didn't know how to help her. Was projecting all these, like, too much. And in that moment, I was like, I felt it. I knew what I did was totally not building a relationship with my daughter. And kind of like you said, I had a lot of reflection to do after that. And I had to come back to my daughter and say, I'm so sorry I did that. I promise I will never do that again. And, you know, that's one way we grow our confidence too as adults is we make promises to ourselves through our failures or whatever you want to call it, our shortcomings, And I said, I will never do that to you again. And it actually grew the relationship with my daughter, because where I acted imperfectly, I acknowledged it. I came back and made a commitment to her. She felt respected because, I apologized, I acknowledged. And in me, I grew my confidence too, because I'm like, I made a commitment to her and myself that I'm not going to do this again. And keeping that promise to myself grows my confidence, and to my daughter. And so I think, kind of like going back to resilience is acknowledging that we're gonna mess up.
Yeah.
And how can we become a better version of ourselves from what we learned from just not nailing it every time? And then we can just keep growing.
Which is the ultimate goal, to boost our kids' self-confidence. Because if they can have that mentality, then they can have that growth mindset and that resilience that some of our kids don't have. I want to pivot and talk about, I feel like even though I'm sharing some of my ugly moments, I feel like for the most part, not too, but for the most part, I feel like I am very tuned into like trying to boost their self-confidence and trying to say the right things and model, imperfection. But there was an area in particular with my son that I just couldn't, I was not in a role to be able to gift this to him. And that is confidence around peers and hearing things from another adult, another positive adult experience. And he could live in my bubble for the rest of his life and hear me cheerleading and redirecting and reframing and growing. But there's a limit to what we can do as parents. And that is why I was so excited for him to work with you, because we didn't meet because he was going into your program. But once I learned about your program, I'm like, oh, I want my son to be in this program that I'm supporting you with. And it's been phenomenal. And I want to talk about, or I want you to talk about the power of peers in improving self-confidence. And then I want to get into some of the work that you do, because there's been a huge difference in my son over the last year since he's been in your programs. And it's something I was never going to be able to access. It was something I could offer him as an opportunity, but it wasn't something I can do. And I think that peer interaction and also learning from other people outside of your family is really huge too.
Yeah, that's big and hard for a parent to acknowledge, like, okay, my child needs something that I can't give them. So let's find some tools and resources to help them get what I can't give. Well, it has definitely been a privilege and an honor to be able to work with your son. And of course, I think he's amazing. And kind of to answer your question, one concept that I believe is extremely valuable with the peer-to-peer connection is the difference between fitting in and belonging. In all groups that I run with teens, generally that's our first conversation is the explanation between the difference of fitting in and belonging. And this is why I love teens that I love when teens have a strong sense of identity, because that's when we can get a lot of clarity in how they show up. So fitting in means I'm going to show up to a group or a classroom or whatever, and I'm going to observe what's around me, and I'm going to formulate my opinions based on what I feel the group will accept and what they'll like. And that's fitting in. And that's just really tough on self-confidence, because, they're always changing. They're thinking they're not good enough the way they are, the way they dress, what they think, what they like. So they're constantly, in this sort of form of chaos internally, because they're trying to read the room and filter through what they can share about themselves, kind of thing. Whereas fitting in is that mindset can be a little destructive, whereas like a belonging, my passion is creating a sense in an environment of belonging for kids so that when they show up to that space, whether it's virtual, in person, in a family, that they know who they are, they know their values, and even though, they may need help clarifying those, they know what they like. They know what they like to wear. They know what they like to watch on TV, or if they like gaming or whatever, they know who they are. They know what they like. And when they show up to that group, they are comfortable revealing it because they know that they're going to be welcomed and respected. And I love the word loved. Like, they know they're going to be loved exactly how they are. And the skill of teens being able to start to value other people who look and act and like things that are different from them.
Yeah.
And how there's that can be so fun to learn and discover, and there's value in people who are different than us.
And it's so therapeutic because, looking at my own son and dealing with a huge history of bullying and feeling like they weren't accepted, and then having social anxiety on top of that,
It's hard.
as a parent, very scary to put them in another peer-based environment. Now
I
there's
bet.
online schooling and they're cocooned and they're protected, but knowing that that's not healthy, like that was where I was at, was like, I know this is not healthy, but it was definitely needed for his mental health and for his academic success. But then it was like, okay, we have triaged this and we're in a good place now, but then we can't live in this cocooned environment.
Right.
There has to be some peer interaction. But your program was like a safe place, still scary because I wasn't sure what to expect, but a safe place of, I'm going to put you in this world of teens, but we have a skilled teen coach who is going to foster this environment of, we're all different, but we all belong to this group. And I wasn't sure how that was going to work out because he can be quirky, and but you have just this talent of setting the stage. I mean, he's been in your programs now for what, like over a year, maybe?
Yeah.
And
I love it.
never gives me a hard time going. Even when I say something like, you have Sharon's group tomorrow, he's like, why do you say that? I'm gonna go. Like, what's the big deal? And this is a kid who refuses literally everything, unless it's in the morning. You know that. We have an issue in the morning. But that speaks highly of the fact that he feels belonging there. He shares in the group. It it was something that the peers gave him, but without a skilled coach to create that environment. And the kids are all different. I mean,
They're
vastly different.
so different. They're so beautiful. They're so different. And I think one thing that really works for the teens is setting the expectation from the beginning,
Yes.
where you celebrate that everybody's different. So, we may do fun things like, what is something, really unique about yourself that maybe other people are different in, where it's not, they don't need to worry that maybe they like something that might be a little juvenile for their age or whatever, but they really love it and they don't want to hide this. They want to share it. So we kind of just really focus on how being unique is such a celebration, because that's who we are and we're amazing.
Well, I do think because you lay the foundation of that, it's respected and it's embraced. And the kids flock to your programs because of it. I'm always like, put me on the wait list. He's going to be there until he's 18. But I am excited as well that now because you are always full, you do phenomenal work, that you are going to go virtual and you're starting your first virtual teen groups, which I am so excited about, because I think a lot of people, when I share like my wins in like the AT parenting community, every week we do like a challenge and a win. And often, not often, but a couple of times I've mentioned like the teen group and how and they're like, what kind of teen confidence group? How do I get my kid involved? And I don't know a lot of people who are doing what you're doing. I mean, I'm sure on a local scale there might be people, but it's not a common thing. And so I am so excited to be able to share with people that now there is, like, they can tap into your skills and you're going to be creating a virtual teen program. I wonder if you can talk about what that will look like.
Yes, thank you. I'm so excited. So yeah, my programs fill up, and so I wanted to be able to have a greater reach because, that's my passion, help teens grow their confidence. So what we're going to do is we have a virtual program, and we are going to, each time we meet, which will be once a month with the teens, we're going to provide, I'm going to provide opportunity for the teens to connect together and also slide in their opportunities for them to grow their skills that can help them also grow their confidence. For example, we talked about this a lot in our time together today, but the first principle we'll be working on, well, I actually like the word play, we'll be playing through in our first meeting, is the concept of forming a strong self-identity. So knowing who you are. And it tags along with that idea of when you walk into a room or you show up, you know who you are, and you're not going to change it for someone else in the room. So that's the first concept. And then because I love hands-on learning and getting mail is so fun, part of this program also includes a package that each participant in the program will receive in the mail once a month that will kind of accentuate and provide some hands-on engagement for the coaching session. So will entail 5 months of coaching, 5 different connected groups that's live and virtual, and 5 boxes that will be mailed to them monthly. So they can have just a little bit extra fun, engagement, and connection, which also I love because, some teens, kind of just tagging along that thought of meet them where they're at, maybe some teens aren't ready to show up to a virtual teen group sharing about what they did this weekend. Maybe they're not quite there yet. So they can engage with those items in the box in their own way. And like I said before, any movement forward is movement. So we celebrate those baby steps, and that just gives them more opportunities. So some other topics, Natasha, in the program will include navigating feelings, which is so big with teens. Their feelings are big. And if we can help them just start to raise their awareness of, okay, how am I feeling right now? Why am I feeling this way? What do I want to do with these feelings? That can really help them shift and take their power back so that they can realize how in charge of their life they can be, which tags on to the next topic of the mindset growth. So, I'm going to work with them to help them realize and just get so excited about how their mindset is kind of like their powerhouse to getting what they want.
Yeah.
Where they see, oh, what is possible, instead of kind of being stuck on this is the way it's always going to be, instead of that acknowledgement of, if I work at something and I practice it, I can get better and there's growth.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and I love the boxes that come with it. I think that is going to be really fun. And the way that you teach is very experiential. And so I feel like my son always comes home with concrete things, like a feelings wheel, or he'll have like a whole bag of toiletries. And you were talking about hygiene. There's always like a really fun activity and like a really creative way of you demonstrating that. I remember one time when they were all creating cakes, and there was talk of imperfection, and like, you're going to design these cakes, but who's not going to mess up when they're doing cake design,
Totally.
Just this like hidden way of teaching these skills in a way that's super engaging and fun. And I like that kids can participate on any level. Like in my support group with the kids and teens, some start without their camera on, and they're just listening. And then we always have a couple of leaders who are very vocal. And then it's interesting because then sometimes the kids with the cameras off become those leaders over time. And
Totally.
You watch that progression without the pressure. And I love that this gives people an opportunity. Now, so this is only available for people in the United States, though, right?
Yes, due to the mailing restrictions, only to people in the United States, but I'm working on something special for those international people, so that you all too can be included in confidence growth opportunities for your teens.
Yeah, so stay tuned for that. So where can people sign up? Actually, I'm saying that, but I actually have a link for them because I created a link just so that make it really simple. If you're interested in Sharon's virtual program, when will this start?
It's going to start in August.
Okay, so August, and then it goes to December?
Yes, ends in December.
Okay. So I imagine that this will fill up just as quickly as your in-person stuff, if not quicker, because it's virtual and so it's open to so many more people.
Yeah.
So definitely jump on this while she has openings, because I am permanently on her wait list, like I said. So I'm always like, I'm on your wait list, right? She's like,
pleasure.
Yeah. So go to natashadaniels.com/teen. And then you will be forwarded over to Sharon West's teen program and check it out. Jump on that while she has it open. I'm guessing you're going to have to close it. Well, either it will fill up or you'll have to close it at least a few weeks before it starts because of the
Yes, I will. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, got to sign up early for that. So natashadaniels.com/teen. Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Natasha. What a great time.
Well, I hope that you found that helpful. You can see why I absolutely love Sharon. She is one of the most inspiring, optimistic people I have ever met. When you are in her presence, she just oozes this positivity in an authentic sort of way. And I just love that about her. And she has this ability to make all kids feel accepted and loved and create an environment of acceptance and love with kids who are vastly different. And I feel like that is a skill that even a lot of therapists do not have. The ability to be able to foster an environment that not only makes kids feel included and belong, but is just this warm, nurturing growth environment. And I've seen that firsthand with my son. It's things there's no way I could do with him that she's able to provide. So tap into it. I hope it doesn't get filled up. You can check it out at natashadaniels.com/teen, and we will forward you over to her work and check out her stuff. And yeah, get your kids signed up before August so that they're ready to go. Start the next school year with those skills. It's only once a month so that there's low commitment for our kids. And my son goes every other week and it's phenomenal. If I could have him go every day, I would, but it goes a long way. So check that out. I hope that you are enjoying the podcast. If you are, don't forget to hit a star and rate it or leave a review wherever you consume your podcast. I greatly appreciate that. And if you leave a review and I can spot it somewhere, I will be reading it next time to show my gratitude. I hope that you find the sparkle in everything you do, and I'll talk to you again next Tuesday. Take care.
Thank you for listening to the AT Parenting Survival Podcast. To get additional support raising a child with anxiety or OCD, visit Natasha's online school of on-demand classes at atparentingsurvivalschool.com.